I want to welcome everyone to Got a Question About Digital Marketing. We have a panelist of 4 experts in digital marketing, and I do believe they'll do a quick intro to explain what their skill sets are. So I'm going to just move on to talking about SCORE. And I want to make sure that you're taking full advantage of everything SCORE has to offer. Our goal is to share small business information with you. We do that in a couple different ways. A great source is the score.org website. You're going to find podcasts, blogs, articles, previously recorded workshops. You're going to find templates that you can download for marketing, for different financial reports, etc. Lots of great information. Another way that we educate people would be through our webinars and workshops. We advertise those through social media, our newsletter, and of course, they're listed on the website as well. I think, though, that the most important thing that SCORE does is mentorship. Our mentors are volunteers, and they come to SCORE with a variety of skills and experiences that they've learned from that they want to share with you. We work with folks in every stage of business, whether you're trying to decide if a business startup is right for you, if you're in that planning phase, you're in business, you're growing your business, or you're exiting your business. We have mentors with skills that can assist you. A beginning session, they're going to want to learn about you, what your goals and challenges are, and they're going to work with you to come up with a plan so that you can be successful. Our mentors do work as a team when necessary to make sure that you get everything that you possibly could need. So I guess the next logical question is going to be, how do I get a mentor? And it's actually very easy. There are multiple ways on the website to get a mentor. Probably the easiest is going to be the score.org website. There's a let us do the matching for you box. You would put your zip code in that box, and that would match you to the chapter that's nearest you. And then a contact form. We're looking for information on what type of business and how we can help you today in the moment, because that will allow us to match you to the mentor with the most appropriate skills. So we are recording today, and we will post the recording in about 24 to 48 hours, and I will put the location of that recording into the chat for you so that you know where to find that information. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Gail. I think Gail's leading our panelists today.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I just want to thank you and SCORE for having us today. We're all really looking forward to this discussion. And I just want to thank everybody that our small business owners or entrepreneurs or just anybody that's interested in digital marketing that's joining us today. I also want to thank my team of colleagues that's joining me. And you'll see we have a very diverse group here with very diverse skill sets. And as Teresa mentioned, everybody will be introducing themselves, so you'll get to hear about everybody's background. We had this opportunity to run this roundtable twice last year, and things have just changed to somewhat of a significant degree since we ran it the last time around. So AI use has become more prevalent, so that's definitely something we're going to be talking about. And then, you know, right now we are living in uncertain times, both in the US and in the world. And so we thought before we dove into questions, we would just do a little roundtable discussion about those two topics, AI use related to marketing, and then also, you know, should or shouldn't you be marketing during uncertain times, and kind of get into the do's and don'ts of both AI and marketing during uncertain times. You can start putting your questions into the chat. Feel free to put them in at any point in time. We'll be kind of triaging them and kind of clumping light questions together so that we can try to answer as many of your questions as we can. But first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Gail Snow-Moraski. I run Results Communications and Research. It's a small digital marketing agency located here on the South Shore of Boston. I've been running my firm for about 11 and a half years now, and have really, really enjoyed it. My background, my corporate background in healthcare marketing and financial services. And like I said, I went out on my own about 11 years ago, and I have a specialty in search engine optimization, which is also called SEO. But before I pass the baton on to some of the other roundtable experts, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things. As I mentioned, it's going to be hard to get to everybody's questions, so we're going to do the best we can to answer your questions. And all of the experts are going to put their email address and their website in the chat, so you can snag that. And if we don't get to your question, you can always reach out to the appropriate person on the roundtable to get your question answered. And we also ask that you don't look for us to provide too much detail on your specific situation, because there just won't be time, and we want to make this workshop really valuable to everybody. So again, throughout the webinar, feel free to put questions in the chat. We are going to start with a little intro discussion, and then we'll be answering your questions. So I think I'm going to have Robin introduce herself, and then have Caroline and Sally introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robin Clapp, and I own a web agency called Web Design by Robin. And I've been in business. This is my 19th year. Prior to this, 13 years as a circuit card designer for General Dynamics, so an engineering background. My specialty is building websites, building strong, custom, secure websites with lots of functionality, and then working with people in the marketing industry, such as Gail and others, to they do a lot of the marketing, and I implement a lot of the strategies to make the website perform well for digital marketing. I am located out of Connecticut, but I'm a long-term resident of Massachusetts, just moved out here 3 years ago, serving clients throughout New England and throughout the country. Nice to be here.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Caroline Quinn, and my company is called Quinnovative Marketing. I started it, I'm in my 11th year, like Gail. And prior to that, I was a regional marketing director for a shopping center developer. So I basically worked on malls with different mall teams in the, mostly in the East and the Midwest. So I basically work in my business right now. I work with small business owners and nonprofit agencies, organizations on general marketing strategy, marketing plans. I also I do a lot of social media, planning, posting, and analyzing. And then also a little bit of email marketing here and there, but generally I do marketing tasks so that, whatever somebody needs, a small business needs for marketing, I help with that. And if it's not something I'm specialized in, then I would go to my network of people, everybody sitting here, for example, and to get their help. So there's always a way to, help my clients with marketing in some way.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sally McCarthy, and I work for Shields SGF as the creative director. I also, with smaller companies, you wear a lot of different hats. So, you bleed over into project management and helping to grow the company. We've been having a lot of discussions around AI and how to use that within our company and how not to use it, which I think is really important. We are a creative marketing company. We specialize in strategy and execution. So we do anything from branding to websites. We do a lot of social media as well. And we've been finding that people are wanting more and more of that kind of outreach. And that also integrates video, which we've gotten more into lately. It seems like having reels and having video on your website is really important to drive the audience participation and in engagement, basically. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation on AI. It's like the wild, wild west right now, and I've been watching a lot of interesting podcasts about it, and even the people who are on the cutting edge of it really don't know where it's all headed. So I think we may not be able to answer every question, but we'll definitely get back to you and look into it if we can't. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for doing the introductions. And I love what Sally just said about it being the wild, wild west out there with AI, because I always call it the AI jungle, similar reference to the term. And I think what Sally said is so true. There's no one person out there that knows how this is all going to play out and what the implications of everything are and what's the best way to handle things. I just try to read as much as I can to stay on top of it and use the tools. And I think we're all going to have to do that. And all us marketers are going to have to continue to share information with each other and brainstorm, because no one has all the answers. So related to AI, we're going to just dive in right now a little bit. I said we were going to, before we took questions, do a little discussion on AI and then marketing during these times. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI do's and don'ts. And I think I'll kick it off and then let everybody else on the panel jump in. I guess my biggest thoughts related to AI are that, you know, you really have to kind of think of it as two different umbrellas, and you have to sort of speak to both, I guess we'll call them almost like SEO gods or something. So there's traditional search, and so that's using a traditional search engine like Bing or Google, and you know, trying to make sure that you appear in one of those engines. That's the traditional search engine optimization, or SEO. But now with the new, what I refer to them three different ways: answer engines, chat or chatbot engines, and then AI search engines. Now you have to be able to kind of speak to those tools and try to rank well in those. And I won't even say rank, I'll say be found, have your organization mentioned or your content appear in those, because those are totally different animals. So that second branch of search engine optimization, people are now using the acronym AEO and GEO. And I guess my do's are, you're going to have to be everywhere on the internet now, because these chat engines, these AI search engines are pulling content from everywhere. They're not just serving up listings to your website. In fact, the chat engines like ChatGPT, for example, doesn't often even serve up a link. And they might serve up your content information. They might serve up the name of your organization, but it's not the typical thing where the chat engines are providing a link and people are going to click on that link and go back to your website. And that's why right now they're referring to that as zero-click optimization, because you're not necessarily going to drive people to your website, and you need to really have a presence all over the place. And I'll let some of the other people on this panel kind of talk about where else you can have a presence besides your website. But even things like discussion boards like Reddit, anybody that's used a chat engine or an answer engine knows that, you know, those search engines are serving up like discussion threads from Reddit all the time now. And so that's just one more place where you might want to appear or have a presence. But, you know, I'll let some of the other people on the panel kind of weigh in about that.
Well, I can definitely attest to the fact that adding frequently asked questions to your website has become the new wave. And I work directly with Gail. And so if she's seeing those trends, she's advising me to advise my clients to, instead of writing big pages with lots of information, to make them those bulleted point question and answers, because they're getting picked up by the AI. So I install a lot of schema for that. So that schema is basically the code underneath that tells Google that this is a question and this is an answer. So if a lot of people are just asking questions on their search engines right now. They're not using like 2 or 3 words anymore. They're asking, how do I do this? Or where can I find that? And what does this mean? So it's very question oriented. So finding as many questions related to your business as possible is a good exercise when you're coming up with content for your website. You can even use ChatGPT and say, what are some good questions that
Right.
get you started, but definitely make it authentically pertaining to what you do specifically. It has to be authentic, but there are ways to get you started. So I'll just put that out there. FAQs are huge.
Yeah, that's really important. Definitely answering questions the target audiences have. And like Robin said, there are ways to identify those questions. And lately, I've just been encouraging clients to kind of create a document that they can share among their teams to store questions that people are asking them regularly. I said, whoever interacts with your prospective clients or your clients, start documenting what those questions are, because those are going to be the ones that are most pertinent to your business, right? These are people that want your products and services. And if you can get your team to document what the common questions are, then you can start answering them in a blog post, an FAQ, both, and then also create infographics that answer those questions, because that's the other thing. Infographics are being served up more in search results. And if you have an infographic that answers that question, that's just going to help you be found online. You do want it to be branded so that you have your name associated with the infographic, and you could consider putting your website URL on it. And you also do need to tag it on the back end. So there's a tag so that the search engines know what the image is about, because search engines don't read the content and images. They have to see the tag. But that's all in keeping with answering key questions that your audiences have. Caroline, do you want to speak a little bit to and Sally, to the social media piece and kind of the role that plays in being found online?
Well, a lot of the socials now are also search engines. So it's,
Right.
A lot of, what I'm seeing and trying to do is to make sure that when you do a post that, you work in, like the wording works into, be, complementary to somebody who's trying to search to answer a question, right? So do you want to kind of take that same approach in your social post, depending on what it's about, but it, a lot of times now when you do a search on Google, you'll see like some of the social stuff will come up. So especially if it's like about a particular business or a specialty. So that's something to keep in mind. So that I don't know what Sally, do you have anything?
Yeah,
more?
well, one of the things we're finding too is I think it used to be more common for us to create an awesome website that works great for the company and then not really do a lot around that website. And we're finding that now we're engaging clients for a longer relationship that's leading to a lot of other things, including video or social media, Google Ads, which we work with Gail on. So that now we're engaging on such a different level. And it's not only just driving traffic back to the website instead of having it just sit there and be stagnant and just hope that people visit it, but it's also feeding into all of these things that hopefully AI will be picking up. So we work with a team in order to make that happen. We've worked with Caroline and just bring in, beyond our own staff, bring in other experts to help make all of that happen. So that would be one way. I think one of the most important things, like we do use AI for certain things, and we're really trying to define as a company how to use it and how not to use it. Like we still want to be really creative and have have ourselves drive that creative. But you can use AI in so many ways that can really help alleviate like mundane tasks, certain amount of research, where you can ask questions for social media posts, for example, get back a whole lot of ideas and be able to then put it into your own voice. And a lot of the ideas that I'll get back are things I wouldn't even have thought of because of how much information AI is able to gather in such a short amount of time. So it is a wonderful tool to be used in that way for social media posts, text, for headlines. It helps in writing proposals. So we've just had a lot of discussion around the fact that we're the thought leader. And whoever the CEO is of our company is the one who really needs to drive how will the company use it and how won't it, so I think it's important to have those discussions.
Can I just to kind of play off on what you just said, Sally, with regards to using AI to create text for your posts. One of the things that's really important is, try and avoid doing like come up with a post for me on XYZ and then you copy and paste it in. Right. It's just so easy to do because, everybody, we're all in a big hurry, right? But it's so important to always review what AI gives back to you, right? Because it's not fail proof. I mean, it could have errors in it. It could have, and also the way it's structured, a lot of times you can kind of pick it off, right? You can see like, oh yeah, I know that was AI right there because it's got all the dashes.
Right,
So
right.
you should always like go in and review your post and tweak it so that, it's more in your voice and, and definitely edit it. But the thing that's really cool about AI too is that you can train it. So you can train it on, being able to replicate your writing style, your voice, by giving it like samples of your content, and then going from there, there's all kinds of information about that. But it's amazing how good it is, depending on what platform you're using. I use ChatGPT, but it's really it can be so helpful. But again, always make sure to review that content that it gives back to you.
You're so right. And like one way we say it, garbage in, garbage out. Like if you don't really give it a lot of really important information that's pertinent, that relates specifically to your project. One of the things you can ask it to do is ask you questions. So interview me. So you can say, ask me 6 questions. And so that they really start to learn more. What is it that you're trying to say? And you can give it a role, like, you're an expert in marketing, and so like you give it certain parameters so that what you're getting back, and you can feed it, like Caroline said, you can feed it reports, here's some information. I want this to, be included. And so it's just learning how to use it as a tool, and that's all it is. It's a tool like all the other tools we've had to learn to use over these many decades. Is to use it in the right way. It doesn't mean it's going to ever, in my opinion, replace people.
Right.
So.
Right, and it shouldn't replace people. Well, I think we need to move on to our next question, but thanks for all that very helpful feedback, everyone. And just one last thing on AI. The other thing that search engines are really looking for is to determine if you're a credible organization before they're serving up your content. So the more you can get people to write Google reviews for you, the more you can have badges and things on your website, maybe an award you won or organizations you belong to, or get what they call backlinks from another credible external site back to your site, the better. You really need to establish now that you're a credible organization. And that can be done by a lot of different means. But certainly encourage your clients to write reviews, particularly if someone says they're happy with your product or service. You certainly should ask them, oh, would you mind writing a review? And you can provide them information on where to do that. And we can, you can reach out to me, and I'm glad to provide more detail on that. I don't want to slow this down because we do want to take questions soon. So I'm just going to dive right into the topic of marketing during uncertain times. And I'm not even going to necessarily say uncertain economic times, but just uncertain times. We always get the question, should we or shouldn't we be marketing, right? And of course, this came up during the pandemic. A lot of those questions came up. I mean, I'm gonna let everybody else jump in on this. What I'm gonna say related to that is if you do have to cut back on marketing, and let's say you are an organization that offers a product or service that's really considered a luxury right now. It could be a business to business product or service. It could be a business to consumer product or service. But let's say either way, that product or service would seem like a luxury to your consumer customer or your business customer. It's going to be more challenging. We're finding with our clients that the sales cycle is now longer for something that is more of a luxury versus an actual need that they have. So, you're gonna have to expect that, and be prepared for that. That said, what I recommend, if you do have to cut back, use the data that's available to you, on the various digital marketing tools that you use. Let's say you advertise on Facebook or LinkedIn or some other social media platform, or you're running Google ads, or whatever you may be doing. It could be a print ad, or you could be sending out e-newsletters. Use your Google Analytics data, use your Google Search Console data, and if you don't know what those accounts are and why you need one, again, you can reach out to me. But you really do want to have analytics tools so that you can look at what you're doing and really analyze what's working, like what's truly leading to a conversion. Not just driving traffic to your website. That's important too, because with the longer sales cycle, it's going to be more about creating awareness. So you do want to look at the activities that are driving traffic to your website, but particularly look at the ones that are converting. And by converting, I mean causing someone to complete an inquiry form, causing someone to email you, call you by phone. So, if dollars are short, you got to revisit what you've done in the past and really see what's worked in the past and focus your time and energy there. But I'm going to let everybody else on the panel weigh in now.
Sure, I'll start. I think diversification is a key to uncertain times. How long have you been in business? How long have you been present on the web? Certainly, like, make sure you're covering all your bases, because the ones that are working this year may not be working next year, but you don't know that. So you got to keep all of them in check. One of the things that I do is I track every inquiry that turns into business, and I know where it came from. So that way I can have the trends percentage wise, where everything, what's working at different times, but it's all about diversification. Definitely get that Google My Business page out there for your local 25-mile radius around. You're the advantage if you're inside that 25-mile radius. Is that going to help you if you're trying to get clients across the country? No, but again, it's a percentage that of your business. And think about the different ways in which people find you. And if it's business to business, maybe you need to invest in a really strong LinkedIn page. Or if it's business consumer, maybe you need to be getting on forums inside of Facebook or doing the posts in the social media. It's not all about the website, but it's about being in business for the long term and showing Google that you are, like Gail said, the real deal. Even so much as owning your domain name for many years. I mean, all those things kind of add up and establish you as a credible answer to a question someone's asking on Google, so that you are served up. And it doesn't matter how you're served up, whether it's your socials or your local listing or your website. As long as you're being served up, somebody will make that call to action and get a hold of you in the way that they feel comfortable. So I really think it's about covering all the bases in uncertain times.
Yeah, I agree with what you both have said too. And I think also it's important that when things get tough, and I know, like, the money gets tight. But it's important that you don't just stop doing marketing, right? Because you still need to stay out there and stay relevant. So, okay, so maybe you focus on your socials. They don't cost, if you're not running ads, and it doesn't cost you anything pretty much. But just the key though is to be consistent, post consistently, whether it's you're doing twice a week, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, whatever it is. But just be there so that, when your followers are on, they see something from you. So that's really important. So don't be invisible. The other thing I would suggest too, that's not expensive, is start building your email list. Because, because email again is free too. Well, for the most part, depending on what platform you use, but you want to it's a great way. You've got people who are already interested in your business and what you have to say, right? So you've got their email address, send them some messaging, think about what your email program is going to be, but, continue to stay out there with your marketing. I think is really important. The other thing too is who knows, Facebook could disappear tomorrow, and all your followers are gone. So, but when you have an email list, that's yours. So it's just something to think.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and also jumping off of something Gail said about there sometimes being a longer sales cycle for more luxury items. It depends on what your you know, what you're selling. It depends on what the demand is. We have a joint client, Gail and I, where it is a big luxury item. It has to do with real estate. And they're not getting the sales as quickly as, you know, you would maybe expect for all the effort. But what one thing Gail did say is, I think it's still important to continue to be out there and in front of people, because, you know, you may not realize that they've seen something, they're sitting on it, they're thinking about it, and you may not really hear from them for a few more weeks, you know, so continuing to stay in front of people is really important. It's hard because like social media takes a lot of time. It's challenging to continue to be in front of people. One of the things we do for all of our clients that we do social media for is set up a content calendar that, you know, when you're going to post, you have a link to your post graphic, you have your post topic and your copy. And so you can populate that in advance when you do have downtime so that you're not scrambling every week because that just starts to feel overwhelming. And that's when people typically say, I can't do this anymore, you know, so if you can get ahead of it, it is very helpful.
There's a lot of great scheduling tools too that you can use, you know, like Buffer, Hootsuite, you know, all of that to help with that.
Yeah, that's really helps a lot. And it really, you know, if you can just schedule it all out for 3 to 6 months. Let's say you have a post that you think it's going to be evergreen and it's not going to be inaccurate or dated for a while. You can schedule it out to appear once a month or something, you know. So yeah, it's a good time saver and definitely makes posting way more efficient. So I think we're probably going to move on from this topic just because we want to have time to take questions. But I think this was really great feedback from everybody. And I think all of us reinforces the one thing you do not want to do during uncertain times or when you're just not bringing in the volume of business you would like. The one thing you do not want to do is disappear. If you can't afford to do some of the other stuff you have been doing in the past, focus on the things that, you know, where you're converting most and bringing in the most inquiries, and, you know, definitely keep your social media presence strong. So I think we're going to start taking questions, and I'm going to start up at the top. So we cover the questions that came in first. So one of the first questions we got, and someone sent this in before the roundtable. What type of businesses are best suited for Pinterest, and how does it differ from Instagram? If I were to choose one over the other to promote my business, what criteria should I use to evaluate my choice? So I'm going to let the social media experts in the group take that on. Maybe Sally and Caroline.
Caroline, do you want to go first?
Sure. I guess you know, looking at the question, it depends on, well, I'm not sure what kind of business it is, but the big thing is with Pinterest, it's a, you know, a big SEO engine, right? So it's really better for like, if you're trying to promote like any kind of content that you have, you know, like people are going to Pinterest for the most part with some intent. They're looking for answers. You know, they're maybe it's somebody who's planning a wedding or, you know, or looking for something, hairstyles or nails or whatever it is. But it's visually oriented, but it's also a good place for like blogs. You know, you want to promote your blog, you can put a pin up there about it. It's going to be there a lot longer. The lifespan of a pin is a lot longer than like an Instagram post, for example. You know, it could be up there for months, maybe years, depending on what it is. So, you know, it's good if like you're in, even if you're like in e-commerce, you know, if you want like somebody, it takes you back to the website, right? So maybe you're trying to sell something in particular, right? So, you know, with every pin has a, you know, a link to a website, which is an advantage over Instagram. But the only thing is Pinterest isn't really a local platform, right? Instagram is. So if you're a local business and you're trying to reach people in a specific target area that's local, then and it's visual, and you want, you know, like say, I don't know, maybe you're I don't know, a dress shop, you know, and you want to show like the latest, you know, merchandise that you just got in for summer. So, you know, Instagram is a great place for that, right? You can put up your videos, you can put up your pictures, all the new styles, and all of that. But if you You know, maybe if you're more of a national company in fashion, for example, maybe you've got a blog that's about what are the trends for summer fashion. So then you've got a pin about that, or showing your merchandise, but you know, you've got more of a national type of customer. So that's just off the top, you know.
Yeah, those are really good points. It was kind of what I was thinking as well, because I have a good friend who owns a retail shop. And she does great with Instagram. She's really consistent, everything that comes in, and a lot of her things are used furniture, but really nice, or that they'll redo them and make them beautiful. She has a lot of different kinds of objects in her store. So she'll always be like showing all the new stuff that's come into the store, and it really does drive traffic well. On the other hand, another person that I know well owns her own architectural firm. And so that's a more professional kind of a business in a sense, where, you know, she maybe will show some of the projects, or she'll have a board about setting the space or something like that, that people will search that particular topic, and they may land on her board because of the type of search that they've done. So I do think it matters, like Caroline said, whether it's local or, you know, whether you have a bigger reach, a broader reach, and also what kind of a business is it that you run. So I think it can work for both, but maybe think that through a little bit.
Yeah, the other thing that is important is that Instagram really allows you to have more engagement with your followers. You know, people post comments, and you can, or they might ask you questions, and you can respond right there, which Pinterest isn't really quite, you know, that isn't really the gig with Pinterest. It's more Instagram. Is if you really want to drive engagement, especially if you're a local business, then Instagram is really a good option.
That's a great point. Yeah.
All right, related to that, those were all great points. And related to that, we got another question about social media. I am a small caterer looking for the best social media approaches, Facebook communities, Yelp, Google, and any other approaches you think I should be active in. So before I turn this over again to Sally and Caroline, I will just address the Google part. So Google, I'm not sure what the reference to Google was, but you know, Google isn't really a form of social media. You do want to have a Google, Robin was talking about this earlier, you do want to have a Google My Business profile. Anybody that has a service or product that you want to be found for near me searches or local searches or in a particular town or city, you want to have a Google My Business profile. And then you want to encourage your clients to put up reviews on your Google My Business profile. Particularly if someone says, I'm really happy with you, again, you can reach out to me and I'm glad to explain how to do it, or I'll send you a blog post about it. But Google makes it so easy when you have a Google My Business profile to request reviews. They provide you with a link within your profile that you can share with your clients to get a review. And in fact, now, within the last 6 to 9 months or so, they actually provide you with a free QR code. So you can just give that QR code to somebody and have them write a review. So I have so many clients that have jumped on that bandwagon of doing it, and it really, really works, because people are usually glad to write the review, but they're busy. And so if you make it easy for them and you just remind them how much it would help you, I think people will be glad to do the reviews. And as far as having a presence on Yelp, I mean, Yelp does allow you to buy advertising on there. But in general, it's kind of the same premise as Google, where if people have had a good experience, you can encourage them to write a Yelp review, because I think people pay more attention to the reviews on Yelp than they do actual advertising, right? Because it's mainly a place where people go to look to see what other people's experiences have been. So do you have anything else you guys want to add on the social media piece? They mentioned Facebook communities.
With Facebook, I mean, Facebook's still a good platform, and especially with groups. So if you're a local business, like a local caterer, maybe you want to get on some, you know, different group sites that where your target customers are. So, you know, maybe, for example, if your target customer are brides, then maybe you want to find like local groups that are, you know, brides to be, people who are planning weddings, that kind of thing. So that's a good thing. Definitely be on Instagram because it's visual. You can show like all the wonderful things that you cook up for events and all of that. And also like if your lane is like business events, then consider LinkedIn.
Right.
Pictures on LinkedIn talk about, how you cater, major events, business events. But in any case, in any of those, just make sure, you have local hashtags, so that, like the South Shore MA or what, wherever you are, whatever that local area is that you're trying to target. And take advantage of, like with Instagram, take advantage of reels and stories and all those different things that you can do on Instagram. It isn't just posting. That a lot of times like reels and stories get a lot more reach than just a typical.
Right.
But I like doing all three. So I think it just makes a lot of sense. The other thing with Yelp, I think, and Gail, you touched on that, but I think with a local business like, the caterer, that you should definitely claim the profile, right? Because you see a lot of times, some businesses don't have a profile there. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but if they're not on there, you don't have any control over it. So
Right.
I don't know if there's a fee to do that right now. I don't work much with Yelp at all.
I don't know. I haven't done as much with Yelp. But that's a good point. At least if you can kind of own some of the information that's going up there about your, organization. And I love that you reminded people about LinkedIn, because so many people lose sight of that. When you're a business to business organization, right? And you're a business offering products and services to other businesses, you really want to have a good presence on LinkedIn. Like, I'll just be honest, for my own business, I spend 90% of my time on LinkedIn. That's where I've gotten business from, because my clients are all businesses, right? So I just feel like so many people lose sight of that, and they don't realize what a resource it is and how it's really important to have a presence there.
It's really growing
Sally,
fast.
did you have anything you wanted to add? Pardon? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with everything that's being said. And I know that for ourselves, we mainly do our posting on LinkedIn because we are looking to engage other businesses. So that does make sense. But also as a visual company, I would definitely encourage Instagram. I think it is really dependent on who your audience is, as far as which platforms and I don't know as much about Yelp either. So I can't really speak to that.
If I could just add one other thing about LinkedIn, though, that one of the biggest trends right now is LinkedIn is really promoting videos. So if you're dabbling on LinkedIn, try the video route. You can really get a lot more reach that way, because LinkedIn really wants to make that grow. So I guess they're getting on the Instagram Reels train, and
Yeah,
it's probably
we don't know how long you can stay on that train once you get going.
That's true. The other thing, make sure you build that email list again, especially for like a caterer, or go to networking events, start building that email list so you can start, pushing your business with email as well.
So related to that, we got a LinkedIn question about how to use it effectively. And I'll just throw out there, Caroline mentioned this earlier, using hashtags, like geographic hashtags, so people know where you're located. And they may be searching on things that are going on in your city or town. And then just using hashtags about your products and services. The other thing, and also what I do sometimes is I tag other experts. So if I'm talking about a particular topic, which is usually SEO or search engine optimization, I will tag other experts to see what their thoughts are. And see if they'll weigh in. We've also learned that sometimes by posting and then putting a comment underneath your post, like being the first one to comment, also causes you to have greater reach in LinkedIn. But I use LinkedIn a lot to serve, to share links back to my blog posts that I've written. But I'm always on there. I'm looking to see, you get notifications from LinkedIn. So you can see conversations that are going on, and I try to jump in on ones that are appropriate. And I would just say, don't make it too self-serving, because it can't be all about you. So if you're just up there and everything's about you, people get tired of that. And so, you want to be, commenting on other people's posts too. A lot of times people share successes, or they're starting a new job, or whatever it may be, or they've gotten some certification. You want to be, seen as supporting other people and not just self-promoting all the time. Does anybody have anything else they want to weigh in about LinkedIn before we move on? We have to move on to some other questions, but was there anything else anybody thought was important to share?
Just remember that it will tell you if you're fully optimized. So if you're not optimized all the way, you can go through it and then we'll tell you what's missing and just build on that. But also, people are using it to search for your services, and they're like the opposite of the local business listing, the Google local business. It's pretty widespread. So I've been very successful getting inquiries throughout the country for people looking for my services, and they found me through LinkedIn. So there is, like, again, diversify, especially if you're going B2B, consider optimizing it fully and posting articles on it regularly.
Yeah, to that point, that summary section is so important to have. That's where you got to have those services listed. So definitely do.
Yeah, definitely. That's like a missed opportunity for sure if you don't fill that in. But you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't, but definitely a missed opportunity. Well, great points on the LinkedIn. We're going to move on to, let's see. So we've got a question. I've been doing small group free webinars to market my health and lifestyle coaching business. Attendees come from my email list, which come from the yoga classes I teach in various locations. I want to get into a more global marketing for these webinars. I've tried YouTube, but the editing is daunting. Would you recommend switching to podcasts or Facebook Live, or stick with YouTube? Honestly, that's not something I have a lot of expertise in. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on this.
Podcasting is so popular now. I mean, I think that's a smart way to go, and YouTube as well. I mean, isn't it like the second largest search engine? I mean, it's Google anyway, but that having those, being in that lane with those two things, and you can use that content and share it on your socials or include it on your website. So there's so much you can do with that.
Yeah,
So I think,
and people can subscribe to your YouTube and build your audience that way. It does still seem like a really viable place, especially if you're doing podcasts and that sort of thing in video. And like Caroline said, tying it to other outreach vehicles is great.
yeah, I'm pushing it out with your email as well.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
also pull it back into your website, because I have some clients that do a lot of videos and a lot of podcasting, and it does live out there in social media land, but you have full control over your website, and having them also be like the main place you store it is really important too, because you want to take ownership of that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, those are all great points. And I think, unfortunately, I think we're going to move on to something beyond social media, because I want to make sure we touch on some other topics. But you can always feel free to reach out to any of us after the roundtable. So, yeah, some of them are a little bit too specific, and I think we should just have separate conversations offline or about those.
There's one here about best way to prepare for website creation.
Yeah, that's what I think would be a good one to do next. Do you want to kick that off, Sally? Or
Yeah, like typically when we have a meeting, when we first meet somebody that we're going to be creating a website for, you'll have a kickoff meeting, and you just really need to listen and learn about what is it that the company is, who are their audience, who are they trying to appeal to. We have a list of questions, of course, that you would ask. You would want to know if there's already branding in place, if they need to brand, and what their brand elements are, so if they have a brand guide that they can share, if they have any other marketing materials that you could look at, so that you can just get a feel for, who they are, and also have them share. And I just want to make sure I'm answering the question correctly. Website creation design meeting. and how content on the site is edited going forward. So you would want to make sure that the company that you're engaged with are going to create a content management system for you that you're able to easily go into the back end and update the information yourself. You don't want to have to constantly be calling the company if you have a few text edits or photos to upload. So just make sure that they teach you, you have after the website is built, that you learn how to use that back end so you can manage that easily yourself. One of the things that's really important before jumping into design is to make sure you have all the content for each of the pages mapped out. So beyond doing a site map, do like a wireframe that has the content for each page in a very, basic way laid out on the page so that when you go to the designers go to design it, they know what the content is that they're speaking to. So that you're not trying to fit the content in after the design. It's just the better way to approach it. And to really think through that user experience, and the maybe have multiple ways to get to the most important pages on that homepage and things like that. So what else was the question?
I'll add in some insight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Even before you start writing content for pages, one thing that I recommend is having free consultations with multiple firms. You'll pretty much find across the board, if you've been recommended to someone who builds a website, a company that you could work with, that they'll give you a free consultation. Also take them up on the free quote so that you can kind of compare apples to apples. And honestly, I wouldn't get too hung up on how much work it's going to take to write this content and map out the site, because you really want to choose someone who you can trust to kind of do what they do best. And we're going to ask you those questions. We're going to bring you through that strategy session. We're going to lay things out and say, this is where we need content. This is the topic. What can you then go back and fill in that space with what makes sense for you, or even bring in writers? There's because it can be very overwhelming. But the one great thing about a website is it's not set in stone. You're not printing it, you're not posting it, and it's out there and it lives there forever. You can go in and change it. So definitely, like what Sally says, I don't think anyone's offering website services right now that is not on a content management platform where you're not given instructions and a login to go and make changes, or they're not offering the service to do it for you if that's what you're more comfortable with. But really get multiple quotes, have multiple conversations, see where your comfort lands, because not only do you want to make sure that you match up with a good web designer, a web designer is also seeing if they're matching up with a good client. And there is a relationship there that's really important, because you don't want to launch a website and then have that relationship go away. This is a person you're going to be working with for years, because it's really important with all the marketing efforts that you do. The long-term gain is your website, and it's not going to rank today, and it may not rank next week or even a year from now, but it's the long game. It's the one stable thing that's going to be there for you through all of the changes. So all the diversification you're doing, your one, solid foundation can be considered your website. So you want to make sure that relationship's a good one, and definitely find a great match for yourself.
Yeah,
that's a
very,
point.
very,
And
very important.
yeah, and also the idea that this isn't just a one-time thing, that you're just gonna launch that website and then they're gonna say bye-bye, and they're not gonna help you really drive your audience, to that website, figure out ways to do that, keep the content relevant, have plans for updating blogs on the site to keep the content changing, because that does help with SEO. And it's true, like the content piece is the hardest piece. So a lot of times in that wireframe stage, just even like having somebody at that point take some of the content that you want to have included and really think through, what else do you need? What is missing? What don't you need? And like Robin said, like we're the experts here, and the web copywriter might be able to come in at that point and make those recommendations and actually write some of that copy that you can then react to, because it's so much easier to react to something, even if it isn't 100%, and make changes to it to put it in your own voice, or to have everything that you want included there, than it is to try to dream it up on your own.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Sally made another really important point, and I think Robin mentioned this too. Your website has to be a living and breathing thing. Websites that someone puts up and just leaves there, and I have seen organizations do this, are not going to be found online today. They're not, because whether it's a traditional search engine or one of the new answer engines or SAI search engines, however you want to refer to them, they're looking for fresh, accurate content, right? And one thing that I've seen as an SEO expert over the last, I'd say 5 years now at least, the search engines are looking at your website for date stamps. They're looking for fresh content. So if you just put up a website and then you never revisit it and you never add new questions to your FAQ, you're not putting up new blog posts, you're not making any changes to your site, they're not going to serve you up. Your ranking really starts to tag. The longer there is, the further out you get from putting up fresh content, the less likely you're going to rank. I've definitely seen that, because I monitor the ranking of a lot of clients, although ranking is becoming less important now, and less meaningful because of the AI search engines. But that's just really important. So at a minimum, if you can't change anything, change your copyright date. You know, it's really bad if your copyright date is like 2020 and it's now, 2025, and people see that in your footer. And you have to remember too, this isn't just about search engines, right? It's about customers visiting your website, and they go to your blog and they see the last time you put up a blog post was 2020. It just doesn't look good. It looks like you're neglecting your site, and they start to think, well, if this person's neglecting their website, are they going to neglect me as a customer? Or are they just not, staying on top of what's going on in the world because they're so outdated? So you never want to look like you're out of step with what's going on in the world. And that's related to social media presence too, because if you don't have any social media presence, you look like you're not relevant, like you're not living in today's day and age. And you never want to look that way, because again, your clients will think, okay, if this person's not staying in touch with what's going on in the world, how do I know they're staying on top of the latest and greatest related to their particular industry? So those are all things to think about. Before we move on to off the website topic, we specifically got a question about GoDaddy. I'm just going to throw this out there. I do not like GoDaddy websites. I don't like them. I've had a few clients use them. I found it very hard to get the websites ranking well. And I found, somebody mentioned in the comments that they've had issues with the SEO piece. I have too. I found it hard to figure out where to even put in the tags for like blog posts or certain pages of the website. So feel free to reach out to me. I can see what I can find out, but I will say it's not my favorite platform for websites because of the SEO capabilities. And there may be someone on here who thinks differently and has had a better experience. And feel free also to put, if you think you can answer this question for the person who is using GoDaddy and you've had success with that, feel free to share your contact information with them. But that's just my experience with GoDaddy.
And also any questions that haven't been answered, you have all of our emails to reach out to after this is wrapped up. And I'm sure you were going to speak to that, Gail, as well.
But also just it's not always platform, but it is. Like if you're thinking about using those plug and play, drag and drop kind of platforms to get your website up there, because they will look pretty, but they don't necessarily rank, and you may not even have the experience to know what's going on in the code. So pairing up with someone, making the investment to pair up with a website designer is a really smart choice, because you're not only going to have that good looking website, but you're going to have everything in place underlining in all of the code that makes it have no errors, to be accessible, to be mobile friendly, to be, to have all of the tags that it needs to have. And so pay a little bit of money, because in the long run, that website, it lives and breathes on the web for a long term. Like I said, long-term gain. You might spend all that time and effort trying to do it yourself. You lose that time if you then switch later and do it the right way. So something to consider. It can be attractive, but you just don't have the expertise a lot of times to know what's going on underneath. And working with someone who also has SEO experience, or in a partnership, or within their company, you kind of get best of both worlds. You have someone who's able to code the website, someone who knows what Google wants, and it's having a team and having some confidence that you're doing the right thing from the beginning, and that's going to serve you long term.
Very good point. We can stay on a few more minutes if it's okay with Teresa. It is 1 o'clock. We did do our best to answer as many questions as we could. Sometimes we couldn't get into the specific of particular person's business or industry. And I did see a question, and this kind of pertains to everybody, about how do you have market saturation? How do you get your name out there? Just so it almost becomes like a household name, or a name in the business industry, or business consumer. Like, what do you need to do? And I think that just all ties back to what we were talking about earlier today. You kind of need to have a presence everywhere, because no one market tactic or strategy or activity is going to reach everybody. And I always like to say, you need to have both push and pull marketing. So push marketing is when you get in front of people that could be a good fit for you. They're not necessarily actively searching, but they could be a good fit for you. And some of that is social media, if you're not running social media ads, or just activities like a print ad or a billboard or something where you're making sure when you buy that media that it reaches people that are in your demographics, but they're not necessarily actively searching to find you. And then, of course, you have the search side of things, which is more like pull marketing, where you're making sure you get in front of the people that are searching for you. Now, related to that, someone asked the question about how you can find out what questions people are asking. There's a tool called Answer the Public. It's very, very inexpensive. I don't want to quote what it is, but it's relatively inexpensive. You can use that tool to find out what questions people are asking. But again, I think one of the best ways to figure out what questions people are asking is start keeping a list of the questions that you're getting regularly within your team, so that you can make sure you answer those on your website. You can also use the Google Ads keyword research planner tool, but you do need to have a Google Ads account. That is free, but you need to how to go in there and do the research. I'm glad to share a blog post or something with anybody that's interested about that. I guess, I don't know, maybe we should just see if each of us wants to kind of wrap things up. We discussed so much today, and I know we're running out of time, and I guess my wrap up will be what I just mentioned, that you are, during these uncertain times and these times of increased use of AI, they say within 5 years, everybody will be using AI search engines, right? So for both uncertain times and AI search engines, I do think you need to have a very large digital footprint and online presence.
I would like to say, just beware of, relying too much on AI, but also don't be afraid of it. Know that things are changing daily, and also that there's a lot of stuff feeding it. So a lot of the stuff feeding it may not be accurate, and it may actually be a negative, so just be careful, like Caroline mentioned earlier, to really read through the content, check your facts and that sort of thing. I do believe it will get better. I know that for design, it's really not very usable right now at all. Like, yeah, maybe it can take out some telephone wires here and there, but like, if you're trying to get it to invent anything, it's getting worse and worse. You can tell when, with certain images, I'd also be aware of when you go to like a stock image company, A lot of times I'll term no AI. You can go to your filters and make sure you're not getting served up AI images, because sometimes they're really weird stuff might be going on in them, like shadows are being cast the wrong way, or somebody has 6 fingers, things like that. It's not a perfect thing yet. And, just be careful with it. That's my wrap up.
Robin or Caroline, any thoughts before we close
Well,
out?
I guess, everybody's, given us all kinds of great information. And I just go back to, just be consistent no matter where you are. Be in a whole lot of places like Gail says, but be consistent in terms of your presence there, and also engage wherever you can engage with people, answer those questions, be timely, get back to people. The more you do that, I think that people will appreciate that. The other thing we didn't talk about is networking. Join your local chamber of commerce and go to events, like that's a great place where people are going to ask you questions, and you can use that to develop your content strategy as well.
It was a pleasure to
And,
be
and
here
they
today.
did mention at an AI conference, go.
I'm going to say it was a pleasure to be here today, and so glad to meet everyone. If I could give anyone any really good advice, I would say just surround yourself, your business, and your success. Surround yourself with some really great people. Your team of experts, even if you use them just a little or even a lot. Make those choices early on, because it is the length of time that you're putting into it where you're going to see the benefits. So if there is something really important to growing your business, make that investment to find someone who's going to work for you and work with you to get you there. So you don't have to be the expert at everything. It's smarter to look for those partners, have those free conversations and consultations, and find a great team.
Great point. And speaking of a great team, thank you everybody who joined me on this round table today. And thank you everybody for attending. Thank you to SCORE for having us. As I put in the chat, definitely reach out with any questions. We're all here to help you. So I think we all put our emails in the chat. But the information about our businesses was in the roundtable description. So you can find us online and just reach out to us that way.
Yeah, thanks, ladies. As always, SCORE greatly appreciates the partnership that we have with you, and we hope to have you again present to our clients in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Thanks, Teresa.